obscure world of parking. We use it every day, but have we really capitalized on the intricacies of our industry? In this podcast, the Parking Network will go behind the scenes and talk to industry professionals about all things parking, from the horizon of evolving technology and even stories of the old days. We hope to encourage and inspire operators and property managers alike to look at parking through a new lens. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Our Parking Industry Podcast. I am Krista Olien, and I'm joined by Leigh Thomas and Clyde Wilson for our roundtable conversation. Today, we get to discuss our interview with Trent Prior. He is the Manager of Business Services for the town of Victoria Park, also known as Vic Park, so you'll hear us reference it that way a lot. And they are located in Australia. I hope you had a chance to listen to that episode, and we'll jump right in. So, Leigh, what was your biggest takeaway from our interview with Trent? It was a delightful one. So what was your favorite part?
I think getting to know Trent and hearing about his management style and management intentions and all of the innovations that are happening in his council in Western Australia has kind of been a peak of my professional year. So I enjoy talking to Trent. I appreciate how curious and innovative he is. He's really easy to talk to, and he's just really fun to visit about parking with. So I feel like I have a new friend, honestly, in the parking industry. So that's probably my highlight. But something I want to talk about today with the two of you is Trent's priority of customer choice and then his relentless expectations for vendor integration, and how those two things have really created the path of the parking experience in his district. How do we help vendors get integrated? How do we help our customers demand it? And what kind of experience can the customer have when integration works the way it's supposed to?
Here's what I think, and I have thought this for a very, very, very long time and have not done a good job of fulfilling this, but we're kind of getting into the situation where we as a group are going to have to. And we are working in a place, we've always been in this place. The manufacturers of the past, providers of manufacturing and software goods of the past, were never parking operators. Didn't report to a client, didn't report to a customer, didn't have to manage the numbers, didn't have to do any of those things. They built something that they gave to us, and the most important mistake was we didn't go back to them and say, no, it's not what we want. Or here's what our customers really want. And we're buying from you. You have to provide it. These are the things that our customers want. If not, we'll just go find somebody who will. And I don't think as an industry, I think we've totally failed at this. And here we are in 2026, and we're still failing at it. We have great providers out there, but we all know in the work that we do, where we're trying to get information and get it to tell us something, I don't think the service provider knows whether we have the ability to provide this option for a customer. But it's a very, very, very important option. And as we move into the future, we're seeing all kinds of demands placed on our customer and our client. And I think we have really failed at that. Now, you guys are pretty new at this, so I'll take all the 100%, 120% of the blame for this. I knew this a long time ago, and I tell you where I knew it from. I knew it from during my college days. I worked part-time, almost full-time, at Sears. And Sears sold products that they went and bought from somebody, put a separate name on it, and Sears only bought specs that they wrote, like Kenmore washers and dryers that had a lifetime guarantee. Sears wrote the specs. I think they gave it to Westinghouse and said, you build this. This is what we're going to sell. And so that's what they did. We had the same thing with tools in the tool department. We had Craftsman Tools. Sears went to Craftsman Tools and said, here's how we want to make every one of these tools. Here's what we want them to do. So I learned that lesson a long time ago and didn't bring it forward as I watched, because I thought I was a smaller potato in a big parking industry, and I didn't go out there and try to fight everybody, even though I did a few times. I went to federal APD and asked them to make some changes. I knew Mark McNicholas, who at the time was president of federal APD. I knew him really well. Flew to his office and said, I'm doing Focus Point, and I really need some software changes that would really help us be able to do this. And he said, Clyde, parking operators don't pay any attention to the software. We're not doing it, so you can forget it. Sorry. And I think we've done not a good job. And we as a team, we now seem to talk about this a lot of what we've got to get the providers and software providers to do, and then provide a better product as these products change for the customers. I think it's a failure on our part. I'm going to take a large share of the blame on this. And I think it's just something we have to do. We have to go to the equipment vendors, software providers, and give them the specs to provide the software and hardware we need to be able to do a job.
So one of the things that we do is we help with RFPs. With what Trent is doing in Vic Park, and then also with Clyde's understanding of how we got here, how does the RFP process need to be improved or changed, or what questions do we need to be asking when we're hosting an RFP to make sure that we get vendors who can do what we need them to do?
So my takeaway from the conversation with Trent was that he developed his plan first of what his expectations were. And I don't feel like he strayed from that until his plan was met. So he went into how they were going to manage the parking, what resources they were going to have in place for those customers. And the variety was a top priority. And so being able to provide that, he didn't stray from that. He went and continued the process until his expectations were satisfied. So I think maintaining those high expectations and having a plan for your operation and for your property before you go into the RFP process, not just waiting to see what you get in responses and then picking the best of those, but having a plan and communicating that in the beginning and saying, this is what we're looking for in your RFP. If you cannot meet that and you don't answer our questions with the information that we're looking for or the solutions that we're looking for, we'll go to RFP again, right? And ask for more vendors to bid on the process, and maybe get a little more creative in who we invite to the table as a candidate for the RFP process to see if anyone's willing to play ball. Honestly, I think the capabilities are there and the technology is definitely there. I think it's more of the having the plan, maintaining the expectations, and then having the vendor with the flexibility that's willing to do that and work with you and, like I said, play ball.
Yeah, I think we're probably at an age now where that may be a little easier to do, because back in the day, so to speak, when you're dealing with a primarily hardware provider, changing hardware is really difficult to do. It's not something you can just say, well, let us tweak this and let's go do this, because changing hardware was really hard to do. Today, when the hardware is kind of getting pushed to the back and standardized, all of the issues that we deal with are all related almost all to software. Software changes are pretty easy to make. So I think you're right, Krista. It's in the RFP process. I think we are beginning to at least write RFPs that are very demanding on what we want to see for this operation. And it may be that we just have to, be tough in this and hold to it to get what we want for our clients, because I think it's easier to do these things today, but we're still seeing a lot of things pop up in ways that the customer interacts with the parking industry. We're seeing a lot of that just kind of pop up now, and we can do a better job of this. And it'll help us and the clients.
So, Krista, you mentioned that something you took from the podcast was Trent's blueprint. Like, he came to the project with a plan. I think you called it a blueprint. How would an asset owner or a management team go about making a blueprint? What are the components of a good plan?
So I think a story that he told was that he has other places that are doing something similar. So he kind of had this opportunity to see something that maybe he liked a little bit or liked pieces of. And then he was able to borrow those concepts and say, oh, I like this particular thing. So that's definitely something I want to see in our operation here in Vic Park. And then maybe you asked about going to conventions and seeing different opportunities that are available. So I think the opportunity to explore, do your research, look for that, be a learner in the industry, look for the different technologies, the different solutions, the creative approaches to different things, and take all of those and pick out what you like. It doesn't have to be a one size fits all. But if you see a feature in a certain particular equipment that you like, a parks vendor, but you don't like the majority of the rest of what they're doing, find a parks vendor that can implement that little feature or change the software like Clyde was mentioning. Just tweak it a little bit, because we want everything at a facility to be customizable to what that facility needs. But you have to know what your needs are first. So I think going in with the questions, but then also looking around, being observant and seeing what's available, what's out there. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. So what ideas do you see that you like that you can borrow from? It's okay to borrow, especially if you see it going well, because then you know that you're not just kind of throwing a dart hoping it hits the target, but you see it, it's working, and you know that it would fit your unique need. So I think that was one of the interesting things that I took away was borrowing from other operations, being a learner, being an observer. And then also he mentioned collaboration and having that expectation of vendors that he puts into place, that they're willing to collaborate with each other. So that relationship is important too.
I think we are at a time when something that was never happened in the past today, where we have different vendors and they are all integratable, so that if you want a little bit of something from one and a little bit of something from the other and a little bit of something from somebody else, they're a little more open today to integration than we ever were before. Just 10 years ago, nobody integrated with anybody. Nobody cooperated with anybody. Nobody had any intention of ever cooperating with another vendor. And I think what I'm seeing today is that, and I think what we as a group are seeing is everybody's open to working together and trying to get a project done.
Yeah, we're working on a project right now where the processes that are in place are not working. So it's a unique location and everything is happening at the exit. However, everyone is exiting. It's kind of like event parking. So everyone is exiting at the exact same time. So paying at the exit, your typical standard way of doing a parking operation, doesn't work there, yet that's the solution that's currently in place. So we are having conversations back and forth with the parking operator and the parks vendor about what else can we do here? Can we implement paying upon entry? Can we implement paying before you even arrive? All through the parks vendor, rather than bringing in a bunch of third-party solutions, can the parks vendor that's already in place make adjustments to meet those needs? And having that ongoing conversation, what's working, what's not working, kind of hammering it from both sides until we find a solution that's more successful. And ultimately, the parkers are happier, more revenues collected, it's more efficient, all the things that we're looking for.
You're right. The location that you're talking about, we seem to now have very, very good cooperation from the equipment provider, but I don't think it started out that way. But in the end, because of the persistence of you guys, all of a sudden the parking operator or the parking equipment vendor is coming around, and they've almost answered every question we have. So, but it took longer to get there than it really should have. That's for sure.
And they are in the process of developing new things to meet these needs that they're being asked to meet. So I think that's an important quality of the vendors too, is that they're constantly growing. They're constantly trying to learn. Since that equipment has been installed and that operation has opened, what new things has the parking vendor put into place? What innovations have they adopted across their platform that weren't there whenever the equipment was installed or the operation was open? You know, maybe they've recently developed something new and launched it since the opening date of the garage, and who knows, but you don't know until you ask. So I think that's an important part is having that contact person, being able to ask the questions, looking for that collaboration, all the things. And if they can't meet your needs, having the open-mindedness to be able to offer to integrate with somebody that can, and being willing to do that, and it not being a derogatory type feeling or a negative approach. It's okay, they can do it. Let's borrow from them and let them help support this operation, because in the end, the vendor, the parks vendor, will have a happy customer, and that's what they need, or else the parks vendor will be out eventually.
Yeah, life is always a learning process, and it seems in our business especially, it never stops trying to learn. And one of the things that I've always paid attention to are the managers and how well they adapt as they move forward in time. And I've learned a lot that it's really a struggle for that. So we came from an industry that for the first 30 years of my time, really the first 40 years of my time almost, we didn't communicate with each other. The vendors didn't really care what we had to say. The clients just wanted the gates to go up and down. And we didn't communicate with each other very well. I knew when I took over a parking operation, I had to make the gates go up and down. And I had to be sure that I got all the customers off the street and got everybody charged. I didn't really need a lot of discussion about that. If I talked to the equipment vendors, they didn't care. They weren't going to do it anyway. Today, you've got to take managers that have matured during that time And since we're just on the edge of that changeover, those people are still here that are moving into a time when communication's everything. We do communicate back and forth better. So you can make a better plan, but you have to think about it. It's just like what you were saying earlier, Krista. You got to think about it, write the plan, be prepared, then go to everybody involved and say, here's what we want to do. Can we pull all of this off? And what do we have to do? And how do we end up providing the best service for the clients? That is not something from this industry's past. And it really just comes up. I think it's really just 5 years ago that this level of communication has just started. So you have senior managers that are running companies, running product development, running operations that grew up in an industry that we didn't communicate. So it's interesting to see it now because I love it. I just think this is the best time the parking industry's had in a long time.
And if you go in with that plan, another benefit to that is that you avoid getting caught up in the sales pitch. So we know that all these companies have salesmen out running around doing their best, right? And they probably do have a great product to offer, but is it the product that the location needs? And that goes for both sides of things, the parking vendor and the parks operator. Is it the service? Is it the product that that location needs? Because like we say all the time, every location is unique. You have to identify those needs first and then be able to say, do you solve my problems? Do you solve my problems? If you don't, can the combination of the two of you solve my problems? And just be flexible on what that solution looks like. But if you stay true to the plan that you developed before you started seeking out the resources to solve it, then you have a foundation to work from. Otherwise, you're just kind of, pinning the tail on the donkey and hoping it's in the right spot.
I thought in listening to Trent's podcast, it seemed like that backing up to that last statement I just made, it seems like one of his real strengths was that he understood communication was extremely important. He talked about that a lot. And I would say, as I was listening to his podcast, I thought this is probably the reason for his success in the industry is because he is a communicator and he thinks about that automatically. So he's part of that new period now where we communicate with everybody involved a lot more than we ever did in the past. So I thought that was really interesting. I picked up a lot out of his podcast. That was the thing that I thought stuck with me the most, that you could tell by listening to the way he talked about problems and talked about the things they were doing. He was really communicating a lot of that then back to the people that he had to report to. I thought that was one of his true strengths. And as we move forward in the parking industry, that communications level obviously is going to be very, very, very important as we move forward. And we're right now in the middle of preparing for another job that we've been offered. And as we looked at it the other day after talking to the client, this is more of a communications job than I think they realize it is. And that's something that you guys have put together a great team in being able to do that. I'm always impressed by watching you guys communicate back and forth with the customers.
Well, since season 1, it seems like every municipality leader or manager that we talk to, communication is one of their strongest things that they bring to the table. And I think that's unique. Commercial is a little different because it's usually private and they just, kind of pick who they want and it doesn't really matter. It does in a way, but in a different way than municipalities. So with municipalities, they have to communicate to boards and councils and decision makers that are political. And they also have to communicate to their community, which is probably one of the most challenging parts. With commercial operations, the tenants have a choice in the buildings that they are choosing to lease their space in. Ultimately, if you are running, let's say, a Class A office building, the commercial operator is also going to be of that high standard. So it's a little bit different of an approach because of who the clients are, the type of expectations that they have, and the resources that are put into place, if you will. But that communication piece going both directions has been something, whenever we talk to Fed Revolt from Tampa, Rami from Houston, he said the same thing. Communication, they made a big change to permits, and communication was one of the biggest parts of his job. And then we heard the same thing from Trent, that one of his strengths is communication. So I think that's a common theme that we're seeing across the board.
Well, and Julie Dixon says the education is, the foundation of an operation. And the important part of education is communicating.
That's right. I went through that time where the municipal parking operators were not good communicators. And I watched them lose their jobs or lose their ability to run good operations because they were hired as parking people. They weren't hired as communicators, but they had to be able to do that because you've got a city council you got to present to. And you don't want the city council deciding what your parking operation is going to be because none of them are qualified. So the city council really hears your presentation and they make their decision based on, I don't think you're going to get me in trouble, so I'm going to go with you. The people that they have to communicate with all through the departments that they report to. Many of the city departments used to report to the police department. A lot of them still do. A lot of them report to public works. A lot of them report to transportation. So they report to different groups and then up to the city council. So reporting to different people who really have a different agenda. If you're not a good communicator, you won't get what you want. So we're seeing what you guys are seeing today on the list of people that you just mentioned is a new era in the people managing city parking departments. They are much better communicators, and they're surviving because of their ability to be good communicators.
We're recording this episode in the middle of June, and it's actually kickoff day for IPMI. So I'm thinking of Brandon Markey, who is presenting at IPMI, and part of his presentation is how to communicate to stakeholders. And from our episode with him earlier this season, he talked about how you think about your audience. You think about who you need to talk to and what they need to know. And then you back up and you gather the data necessary to communicate to that audience what they need to know. And I think that's super practical and would help all of us as we communicate to boards and stakeholders and customers and things.
Yeah, no matter who they are, whether they're municipality or commercial office, decision makers or universities, they have the same type of situation. They're a little more closely related to the municipality presentation type. So you have to be able to sell what you need, if you will. So we kind of knock on salesmen a lot, but you have to be a salesman if you're in those types of roles where you have to communicate what you need, like Leigh is saying, but also communicate how much better it will make the operation that you're in charge of and that the stakeholders are ultimately benefiting from, because it reflects on them, right? Whether it's financially or reputation wise, it reflects on them. And so if a municipality makes a poor choice because they were not presented with a solution that was viable, even though it was maybe seemed like a good idea at the time, but the research wasn't in place, that reflects on the city. And so making those choices, it's important because the wheels of change are slow. So once you have something in place, it's kind of difficult to, take it out and try to put something else that is a good solution into place.
We've discussed this before on the commercial office parking side, the management account side, where so many of the parking operators have failed to differentiate themselves. So the clients really think, I'm just going for a little bit. I just need to change operators. They haven't reached the level where they're able to go to a client and convince the client, I can solve the problems you have. We can go through the list of the things that you want to see improved. We can go through the list of the things that are new to the parking industry today. And here's how they're working. Here's where they're working. We're still not seeing those kinds of presentations from the commercial side. But it's interesting to see that the municipal side has really taken off with that.
Our conversation about Trent's episode has been fascinating. I always learn something. Every single time we talk, I learn something. And I hope our audience does too, because that is one of our goals, is knowledge and resources. I think our episode with Trent was both. We got a lot of resources and we also gained a lot of knowledge, and very applicable knowledge, which is rare. So I hope you can take something that you learned today or something that you learned from Trent's episode and apply it to your daily choices that you're making in your operation, whether you're a parks vendor, a parking manager, or a property manager, whatever it is. Have a plan, communicate, know what you need before you go out and seek vendors to satisfy those needs, and keep your expectations high. Keep them high, and someone will meet them, especially this day and age with this technology level and this energy level that we have in our industry. Everybody's eager. So let's take advantage of that so we can get the best solutions possible, and the cream will rise to the top, and we'll have our best vendors in place with the best operations they can possibly provide. So thanks everybody for joining us on this episode of the Our Parking Industry Podcast, and we will see you next time. To quote one of the greatest business minds of our time, Charles Munger, he said, "The best thing a human can do is help another human being know more." Here on our Parking Industry Podcast, we want to provide knowledge and resources. If you heard something that sparked your curiosity in today's episode, please reach out on our socials at TPN Consulting. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram. Don't forget to subscribe and follow. See you next time on Our Parking Industry.